You were not made to be emotional.
Men can cry. So it's okay to be weak.
Men are not meant to be dominant. Men are meant to be submissive.
The most beautiful and the most terrifying thing about being a man is you're born without value. Society doesn't care about you. You're only going to be cared about based on how useful you are.
Dispelling toxic masculinity and really redefining what it means to be a man.
No one man should have all that power. The clock's ticking, I just count the hours. Stop tripping, I'm tripping off the power.
How's everybody doing? Good. Well, if you were not with us last week, then welcome to week 2 of Necessary Masculinity. And you have no idea that last weekend I ended the message by inviting all the guys who call Suncrest home to some sacrificial responsibility, including showing up at 5:30 Wednesday morning in some workout clothes with a Bible. And this past Wednesday morning, here's what we got. Well over 100 guys showed up in the parking lot. It was so good. It was physical. It was physical with dads working out with sons. It was physical with some guys who had some limited mobility standing cheering on the guys who are going. It was physical with a few guys who are like, that dude's got some dog in him. He's going to go after it, just pushing everybody else. It was physical in that way, but it wasn't just physical. The whole idea behind this is it's physical and it's relational and it's spiritual. And so we brought our Bibles and we looked at the scriptures, and I got to say, it's just a good day when a group of guys is together taking steps forward to step forward in our faith. And so we are doing it again this coming Wednesday morning at 5:30 and the following Wednesday morning, 2 weeks left for this series and for the Wednesday mornings. And if you weren't able to make it this past Wednesday, I would love to invite you to join the rest of us for that experience this week. Now, last week I told you that the questions that are guiding this series called Necessary Masculinity are pretty straightforward. They're questions like this. Do the men of Suncrest look any different than the men of the world? Listen, I'm not wasting my time here. I'm trying to create a community, a church, where the guys here are different than all the guys who are out there in the best, most wholesome, faith-filled, brave, and bold ways. I want us to be different. Second, do those who follow Jesus really have anything better to offer? And the calling, as we learned last week, of a man is to build something and to be brave and to reject passivity and reject hostility. That is the way of Jesus. And so I hope that we see that way as better for us and better for the world around us. And then the third question was this: what is healthy masculinity? And of course, we started to outline some of that, which I'll carry on today and next week. But I will say this. I had a fair number of conversations with women after last week. And the conversations went one of 3 directions. Of course, some of the women felt a little bit left out. Fair enough. The series is called Necessary Masculinity. But the 3 different responses I got, and I want to give you kind of my commentary on them, are this. Some women seem to say to me something in the vein of, you go get them, Greg. You go tell those guys the way it is. And I got to tell you, if that was your response as a woman, that's not what I was going for. It's not what I was going for. We are not a red meat church. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm not really interested in stirring us up to be mad or upset about what other people out there are doing. And we just talk about those other things, not really about how we challenge ourselves. And we start pointing our fingers and they need to get it. We are not that kind of church. And ladies, is not that kind of message. If your response was, go get them, Greg, I'm going to ask you to step back from that a little bit. The second response I got was, what am I supposed to do with this, Greg? Now, I think that's a great question. And I want to give you an answer to that question. Last year on Father's Day weekend, I stood up here and I talked about the men in our lives a little bit before handing it off to a woman in our church to teach the women of our church about how to handle the men in our lives. And on that weekend, I said, many of the men I come across feel like we're just expected to be machines. Our only good is our output. Our only good is what we can provide. It's not really appreciated. It's not really affirmed. There's not a lot of gratitude. It's just expected. That's what guys ought to do. And then you end up just feeling like a machine. After that message, I had a ton of guys say, Greg, that's how I feel. And I had not a single woman say, I bet that's how my husband feels. And I want you to know, for all the men in your lives, it's possible that they feel like a machine, and it's possible that you're treating them like a machine. And so I'm encouraging you, ladies, that if you have a man in your life who's a godly man, who's a good man, who's setting the pace for your family, if you can look for anything in his day that you can affirm, please, please, please don't treat him like a machine. This is what you can do. If you think he's bold and brave, he's not hostile, not passive, tell him thank you. Look him in the eye. Affirm him for who he is, and he will only want to do more of it out of that. And it may be that the guys in your life do not reflect those qualities, and I'm going to really implore you not to try to control him or send him the link of the message or other things like that, but instead to engage him as a man, as a person, and co-create a vision with him. Don't ask him to get on board of your vision. That's the controlling piece that we talked about last week. And don't feel like you can't say anything. He's not a machine. He's a man. And so you can co-create. The third thing that women told me was, multiple women said, Greg, you're harder on the guys than you are on us. And the only thing I could say is, guilty. By design, actually. I mean, I think with a little bit of integrity for myself, I ought to be hard. I'm a guy. I ought to be harder on the guys than I am on the ladies. And so when a few ladies told me that, I got to tell you, I've kind of waffled back and forth a little bit between, I'm not gonna change that, and, oh, you want that? All right. You're getting a little bit of it already, aren't you? So it's been absolutely fascinating. Today is Father's Day weekend, and there's a lot to celebrate. So whether you're a dad, whether you hope to be a dad someday, whether you have a dad, or thank God for those of you who have played the father figure role in somebody's life who didn't have a dad, I'm really, really glad that you're here. And I'm going to continue this Necessary Masculinity series in the vein of fatherhood today. A well-known French philosopher in the last century said this: there is no good father. That's the rule. Now, Jean-Paul Sartre was mostly, I think, speaking out of his own experience. And he had some bitterness that had welled up from his own experience. And then as a philosopher, he decided to lay this perspective on all of us as if it were true for everyone. And I see many people act this way, fathers and non-fathers. It's like, well, I'm not sure there's even such a thing as a good father. But I'm standing here telling you, I had a good father. That's definitely not true. It can be true, but it's not true universally. And when I had the chance to eulogize my dad 10 years ago next month, I stood up in front of my family and his friends, people he had done business with, and I said, thank God for my dad, because I know what was true about him is true about everyone and their father. The very first impression that gets made on you about what God is like is what your father is like. And I started with a head start because I had a father who gave me an impression, a healthy impression of who God is. I understand not everybody in this room has that, and I understand the privilege of the position that I hold. But it is a great calling to men to appreciate that when our children look at us, the very first thing that's happening is they're getting an image of what the Heavenly Father is like based on what you and I are like. Of course, media, for a long time now, doesn't usually cast men and fathers in this way. Instead, dad is a joke. He's a bumbling idiot who's kind of naive and usually can't quite get out of his own way. This has been going on for a while now, right? You remember Al Bundy? Married with Children? Maybe for you it was Modern Family and Phil Dunphy. Maybe for others it was Jerry Smith. For 40 years almost now, it's been Homer Simpson. That's been completely true. The Simpsons was recently renewed through the year 2029, which will mark 40 years of a stumbling, bumbling idiot who can't get out of his own way, being representative culturally of what fatherhood might be. And today, I have a better vision for you. The vision of the French philosopher, the vision of these television characters is a vision that is too low. And guys, our calling is higher than that. Let me name a couple of things that I think are obvious. First of all, mothers can do the things that fathers can't. We all can agree on that, right? Biologically, socially, the moms can do some things that fathers can't. And fathers can do things that mothers can't. I don't think this is controversial. It's of course possible to supplement someone who doesn't have a father or doesn't have a good father, but it is actually impossible to replace someone who's lacking a father or a good father. And there is a particular role that as men we play in the lives of our families that deserves a broader vision. Dads, you're setting the course for your daughters, of course. And when they look for a man that they will marry one day, the main image that they're going to have in their mind is you. If they respected you and honored you, they're going to look for a guy who's like you. And if they did not respect or honor you, they're going to look for a guy who's different than you. It doesn't matter. Our role in our daughters' lives, uniquely as a father, is going to shape the kind of man that she chooses one day. Listen, for those of us who are raising sons, there is overwhelming sociological and psychological development that basically says, dads, you need to physically wrestle with your sons. You got to do it. And I know your wife might even complain about it because you broke some things while you were doing it. Wives, get over it. How am I doing, ladies? Am I getting better? Get over it. The dads have to wrestle with their sons. The sons want to test their dad. The sons want to get out of the grip of their dad. There's something developmentally very healthy that only dads can bring in this regard. I got to tell you, I have a son who was in the Marines. He came home from the Marines on one of his leaves, and he wanted to wrestle me. I cried uncle really, really fast. And he felt great about it. And I have a 6-year-old son, and one of his favorite things, what he wants to do, is there's something about the struggle with a man and your kindness, the victory, the defeat, all of it that really, really matters. But there is nothing more important in raising our sons and raising our daughters than our voice in their lives. We communicate with our words whether our daughters have value or not. And they receive that from their fathers in a very unique way. We communicate to our sons whether we are proud of them or not. And it shapes their lives in the words that they hear from their father. Jesus, on one of the most monumental occasions of his life, who is the Son of God, who had the Father remaining in heaven. And for the most part, after the Father sent him to be born of a virgin, he kind of let the top roll. But every now and then, the Father would break in and say, I got to say something. And upon a significant occasion in Jesus' life, this is what he says. This is my Son, whom I love. In him I am well pleased. Guys, this is a model for us. It is almost this simple, that we need to communicate with our actions and our words, that our kids know we love them, that we're with them, and we're pleased with them, we're proud of them. They need to hear that from us. They need to hear it from us consistently, but they especially need to hear it from us on certain occasions. This was the occasion of Jesus' baptism. And when you have the honor of baptizing your son or your daughter, or your wife baptizes your son or your daughter, they need to hear this from you. You're my son, you're my daughter, who I love. And that decision you made, I'm so proud of you. On this occasion, right after Jesus was baptized, he was preparing to go out to face the greatest temptations that he would face. And in preparation for going out to face the real world and the greatest temptations he would face, he needed to have these words from his dad. Hey, I'm with you. I love you. I'm proud of you. There's something strengthening and emboldening to a daughter and to a son who hear that and know their dad means it. This is so powerful for a dad. And so, for the rest of this message, I want to sit in a short passage of the Psalms. Psalms are a beautiful collection of reflections and observations and worship at different times. This particular psalm, Psalm 127, is a psalm of David. And so he's writing about his observation and his experience. And he starts with a very important passage for all of us who are dads to remember. He says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. This was actually the story of David's life. He put guards to watch over the city. And if God was with them, they were protected. If God wasn't with them, it didn't matter how many guards he put over the city. And there is something about this that I hope that we can embrace as dads, because it is beginning with humility. It's appreciating that we have a role, and yet it's not all up to us. And we shouldn't feel like it is. Because unless God builds your family, you're building in vain. To me, that's encouraging. I want us all to take our responsibility, and at the same time, I want us all to appreciate that when I don't know what to do, and maybe I'm even having a little trouble sleeping at night because of one of my kids, this isn't all up to me. This is God. God's doing his work. And I'm trying to be faithful to him and shepherd my children into adulthood and beyond. The rest of that passage, or part of the rest of it in Psalm 127, says this: children are a heritage from the Lord. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Now I'm going to break this simple sentence down into 3 parts, but just listen to it one more time. Children are a heritage from the Lord. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, children are the children born in one's youth. So let's start with the opening line of that. Children are a heritage from the Lord. And it'd be good for all of us to remember that our children are his children. Our children, the ones that you're responsible for raising, the ones that you're guiding when they're 3 and 13, and probably still when they're 33, they're God's more than they're yours. I'm privileged to be the father of 4. Terrell and Jackson and Abby and Davion. I take my responsibility, but they are God's children. So we are stewards. God has a plan for their life. And it's our role not to give them our plan for their life, but instead to appreciate they're a heritage from God. My job is to help them find God's plan for their life, to nurture that, to help them explore it, to set them on their course. Of course, our children belong to God. Any of you who have ever had your children grow up and be sent out from the house appreciate how temporary different seasons of parenting are. A little less than 2 years ago, we drove our daughter to college for her freshman year. And of course, it was just a proud moment, one of those transition moments where she needs to hear from me, I love you, I'm with you, I'm proud of you. But it was also uniquely a moment where, hey, she's not just leaving for a weekend. She's stepping into a new phase of life where I will not be as present as I previously would, and I need to entrust her to God. And if any of you has ever dropped off someone at college, tell me I wasn't alone and bawling my eyes out on the way home. With a reality that children are a heritage to the Lord. They are his more than they're mine. And so I entrust them to him. Since our children are really God's, I think this is why the instruction to fathers in Ephesians 6 says this particular thing. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. Fathers, that hostility thing we talked about last week, when it comes out of you, man, that is not good for your kids. Do not exasperate your children, but instead bring them up in the training and in the instruction of the Lord. Parents, there are no guarantees no matter how much you bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord, that they will ultimately choose that course for their life. I've sat with many parents and released them of the guilt that they carry, that their children are not following the path that they intended for them. The responsibility was this, that you bring them up, you train them, and then they have a will and they have an agency just as everyone else does. But this is our part. That I would reject passivity, that I would make sure I'm being active and saying, well, before they leave my house, I'll take responsibility to train them up in the instruction of the Lord. The second part of the verse says this, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. And it's just a reminder that our children are arrows. And the main thing you get to do with an arrow is you get to set its aim. Earlier this spring, I was at father-son camp with a bunch of other dads and sons from Suncrest. I was there with my 6-year-old. And the camp that we went to, which is a blast, you should totally sign up next year, was in central Indiana. And they had bow and arrow, right? And it was really cool because you could shoot at traditional targets. They also had dinosaurs set up that you could shoot at. And you can imagine how the kids loved aiming at the dinosaurs. But I was in a line with about half a dozen other dads, and we all have 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. And when someone pulled the bow back, and then they're like, oh, you're like, whoa! Because that arrow's going to go wherever you aim it. And you're responsible for aiming. And maybe as a life lesson, when you aim at the target, sometimes you hit it. Sometimes you hit it in the bullseye. Sometimes you get close. Our responsibility is to aim well. And I'm asking you to aim your children because aim is everything. Your kids, of course, are watching you, and you get to set the example for them. And they will come up along tensions and moments in their life, and they will learn to either be a child of honor, a person of honor and integrity, or someone who's willing to cheat a little bit and take the shortcut. One of the memories from my childhood is my older brother was a Cub Scout, and they did a walk every year with the Cub Scouts. It was called the Walk for Sockanock. Sockanock was the camp that the Cub Scouts went to. And they were raising money, of course, and you'd go get sponsored. Hey, it's a 5-mile hike, and, will you sponsor me for $1 a mile or $2 a mile or $10 a mile, right? So my older brother went around. He got all the sponsors that he could. And then they had the walk. And when they were on the walk, they actually got off their course for a little while, and they ended up walking 8 miles instead of 5 miles. And so when the Cub Scout leader came back, he said to all the boys, he said, hey, these people who sponsored you $1 a mile, they thought their max was 5, but you can ask them for 8 because you walked 8 miles. And he said, appropriately, I think, hey, you don't twist their arm, don't make them do more than they committed, but you can tell them the story, and maybe they would give you $1 for each mile. Fair enough. My older brother was going to do exactly that. And then my dad caught wind that since they were off course and they were lost a little bit, some of the boys got a ride for a couple miles. And that my older brother actually only walked 6 miles, not 8 miles. He rode the other 2. And of course, my dad had a choice. Hey, do you just go ahead and collect the money, tell the story, do whatever you're going to do? You've already collected some of the money. What are you going to do now, Dad? What are you going to do now, Tim? And I'll never forget. I wasn't even the son experiencing it. I was just observing it. And my dad said, well, you have 2 choices. You can either take that money, people gave you extra, you can walk it right back to their house today, because we are not taking money for something you didn't do. Or you can go walk 2 miles. But what you will not do is take a shortcut. You will not collect money for something that you didn't do. And as I tell you the story today, I still feel it all inside. I had to be 6 years old when this all went down. And my dad's setting the course. He's aiming an arrow. Are we teaching our kids to be honorable and have integrity? Or are we saying, you know what, it's not that big a deal. Take the shortcut. Everybody cheats. And of course, there's a piece of this that goes even deeper than character, of integrity versus cheating. And it comes at the level of our faith formation. It was Joshua who said this. Maybe this passage is familiar to you. He said, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we're serving the Lord." And I love the stark contrast of this. I love the definitive nature of it. I love that Joshua honors the free will of a man. He says, listen, if you don't want to serve God, if you don't want your family to serve God, if the most important thing in your kids' life isn't to orient them around their faith in God, then just admit it. Say, hey, son, the God thing's kind of important, but to me, baseball's really important. And I want you to know, I'm aiming you at baseball more than I'm aiming you at faith. Just say it. Just be honest about it. If it seems undesirable to you, then call it. But for me and my house, we have one North Star, and it is serving the Lord. Now, this is the thing. Serving the Lord isn't a burden in as much as it is a vision. Because ultimately, it is good for you as a father, it is good for your kids, and it is really good for the world that is around us. I'm going to give you a little information here. I call it the good news about Christian men, and it comes from the most definitive study that's been done of fatherhood and marriage, broken down on various scales of society, including faith in Christ. It's a study that was done by a guy named Brad Wilcox, ended up writing a book about it, published by the University of Chicago. He is a professor at the University of Virginia, and he calls it Soft Patriarchs, New Men. And the conclusion of this book is simple. It's this, that Christian men who are devout in their faith shattered the negative stereotypes. Of course, there are negative stereotypes out there about Christian men, about a traditional approach to parenting. And he says, devout Christian. Now, this is his definition of devout. This is very important. His definition of devout was guys who go to church at least 3 times a month, who aim at being in the scriptures and praying every day. They don't necessarily hit it, but that's an aim and the habit of their life. And they want to orient their life around the life of Jesus, to be like Christ themselves. For guys who meet that measure, it is really good news for their kids and for their wives and for the world around them. Their marriages are happier, their wives feel more nurtured, the husbands are more engaged. Why? Because for him and his house, they've decided to serve the Lord. Now, of course, there's other narratives out there. Oh, the toxic masculinity, sometimes attached to Christianity. It's interesting, some of the headlines that came out of the study, this is the New York Times, religious men can be devoted dads too. Oh, really? Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging it. It wasn't just the New York Times. How about the Washington Post? The latest social science is wrong. Religion is good for families and kids. No, actually, the latest social science says that religion is good. Let me give you just a few things. This is a secular study. This is the most definitive study that's been done on the nature of families and marriage and child raising. Research found that evangelical Protestant men, that's us, or at least some of us, who attend church regularly are the least likely of any group in America to commit domestic violence. They tested it against all kinds of social categories, race, income, geography in the United States. All of them came back with the same conclusion. This is good news for men who say, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, let me show you a small contrast, or a big contrast to that. The most violent husbands in America are not atheists. The most violent husbands in America are nominal evangelicals who attend church infrequently or not at all. What's going on here? I'll tell you what's going on here. There's a group of guys who have an ideology in them that they think is muscular and traditional, but they leave out the Jesus part. They don't commit themselves to practices like worshiping God and reading their scriptures. And this I think this is why Joshua says, either get in or get out. Don't run the middle. It's bad news for the people around us. Here's another conclusion. It turns out that the happiest of all wives in America are religious conservatives. Fully 73% of wives who hold conservative gender values and attend religious services regularly with their husbands have high quality marriages. 73% is off the charts, leads all other categories. And it shouldn't be surprising to us, because what do you hear those wives saying? They're saying, thank God for my husband. He's not a machine. I don't just expect him to provide and to show up and get on board with my vision. They're saying, I got a guy. He's brave, and he's called to build something. He's not hostile, and he's not passive. And when I engage him and he engages me, life can be good. And this is the vision for a few of you that are in this room, and your marriages aren't good right now. There is a different way if you say, for me and my house, we serve the Lord. Here's the last thing. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, children are born in one's youth, so our children need a warrior. I don't know what your image of warrior is. I've been trying to describe it to you. Someone who would build something and be brave, someone who's not hostile and not passive. You can't be a warrior and be passive. So what do warriors do? They give their life. And this is the calling of a Christian man. It is particularly the calling of a Christian husband and a Christian father. That I would not live life for myself. That I would not try to arrange my week for myself. That the very people I would die for, if I have any integrity at all, I would also live for each day. I would give my life either way. And this is the calling of husbands. Ephesians 5 says this: husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's the calling. Just like Christ loved the church and died for the church, we would give our lives for our wives. And of course, for our kids. I want to close with a story today. There's a memorial on the shores of the Potomac in Washington, D.C. It's a memorial to the Titanic. Many of you have probably never visited this. This isn't probably the main place you would go if you were in Washington, D.C. But the Titanic sunk on April 15th, 1912, of course, making its maiden voyage, across the Atlantic to the United States. It sunk that night, and while there were 2,200 people on board, there were not nearly enough lifeboats, and so 1,500 people perished. There were some fights to get on the lifeboats, but largely the men who were present on the Titanic deferred and gave the spots on the lifeboats to women and to children, as a noble, traditional, godly man would, that he would give his life for them. As the story goes, after some men put their wives and let the children have the lifeboats, they went back to their quarters and they dressed up in their best black tie. And they went and had one final dinner, knowing that the ship was going down, as a toast to sacrificial responsibility and to die like a gentleman. On this memorial inscribed in Washington, D.C., it says, to the brave men who perished in the wreck of the Titanic, April 15th, 1912, they gave their lives that women and children be saved, erected by the women of America. Only women were allowed to contribute to this monument to those brave men. In the 1980s, someone started doing a little bit of research on this story and wanted to rekindle the inspiration of those brave men, and started a tradition that on April 15th every year, a group of guys would put on their best, they would go out to dinner together, and then they would go and visit the statue every April 15th and offer a toast to those brave men. This is what the toast says: to their dignity, grace, and style, but most of all tonight, we toast their courage. To those brave men, hear, hear. To the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the ignorant and the learned, all who gave their lives nobly to save women and children, to those brave men, hear, hear. chivalry, gallantry, bravery, and grace. In these times, those ideals seem to have all but disappeared, but by our remembrance, they are born again, and in our lives, they can live again. Hear, hear. And so, I want to ask all the guys in this room to join me in a toast. You got your starry, right? It's time to pick it up right now. Just the guys, men and boys, anyone who's got a star with you. If you would embrace these same values of bravery, of self-sacrifice, how about this? Let's raise our cans to that kind. Guys and guys only, would you stand up with me? Would you crack open your can? I'll read the passage. We all say, hear, hear, okay? To their dignity, grace, and style, but most of all tonight, we toast their courage to those brave men. Hear, hear. To the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the ignorant and the learned, all who gave their lives nobly to save women and children, to those brave men. Hear, hear. Chivalry, gallantry, bravery, and grace. In these times, those ideals seem to have all but disappeared, but by our remembrance, they are born again, and in our lives, they can live again. Hear, hear. You want to drink to that? Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.